Growing up as a kid, if you were lucky enough to have cable, you basically had three options. You had Nickelodeon, which was sort of the OG with all the classic, iconic animated shows. And then you had Cartoon Network, who was sort of like the wild card. And then you also had Disney Channel. While Disney itself as a brand was definitely bigger than the other two, it sort of always felt like the outlier to me. There was always just sort of like a stigma to it, like, no, I don't watch Disney. That's the one with Mickey cartoons and shows for teenage girls, even though I definitely did. But then in the mid-2000s, something changed. It felt like they had finally started to take some big swings with their shows. And while at first they started with pretty common slice of life type shows, they seemed to get weirder and weirder and weirder. So today I'll be taking a look back at some classic Disney Channel shows to see just how weird they got. The higher they rank, the weirder they are. These are only going to be shows that I actually watched as a kid, so anything past like 2010 probably wasn't really on my radar. Starting us off, Kim Possible. It really only makes sense to start off with an animated show here. Kim Possible has a setup that kind of sounds weird at first, but honestly isn't that bad. The story centers around Kim, who is basically a secret agent, spending her free time outside of school and teenage drama to save the world. And it's not like she's part of some secret organization like Spy Kids. She's just doing it on her own with the help of her friend Ron, who joins her on missions, and Wade, who's her guy in the chair. Now I've got two biggies that make this one stand out as kind of weird. Number one, the villains. Sometimes Kim's just going up against people who are like normal bad guys doing bad things. But then on the flip side, you've got her going up against monsters, people with superpowers, and even aliens. Which leads me to the second weird thing here, and that's the fact that nobody seems to care. People are grateful for sure, but I don't remember any instance of like her parents being like, no, you can't go fight this evil monkey man, you have school tomorrow. And she isn't like doing this all in disguise or with an alter ego. Everybody just knows, and they're cool with it. Even like the police and government are just fine with her going out and doing all these dangerous missions. And like, yeah, she's good at what she does, but there's got to be some sort of like laws and regulations here, right? So with those two weirdness factors, I think this one's going to start us off in the middle of the road on a B tier. American Dragon Jake Long. This one honestly felt like a really big swing. I mean, sure, it's all about dragons and fighting, but with that slice of lifestyle that most of these shows are known for. I think this one sort of feels like Disney went, oh no, we've made too many shows for teenage girls. Time to throw a karate dragon in the mix to get the boys back. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't work. I loved this one as a kid. I was hooked immediately and would watch it anytime it was on. And while it was a really fun show, it definitely has some weirdness to it. I mean, it kind of has to, with the whole show being centered around a teenage boy who can turn into a dragon and goes off to fight mystical creatures. But then outside of the dragon of it all, you've got talking animals, a crush who happens to hunt down said mystical creatures, and the fact that these beings and Jake himself are pretty much constantly seen by others and nobody thinks that the world is ending. This world is decently strange with all the magical properties going on, but at the same time it's toned down enough and we're given enough of Jake's normal teenager life that it feels pretty balanced at the same time. So I think I'd probably throw this one on B tier as well. Even Stevens. One of the earliest live-action shows on Disney, at least that I remember watching. For the most part, Even Stevens wasn't that weird. It was zany, no doubt, but there wasn't like anything otherworldly going on here, unless you count Beans. Honestly, the weirdest things to come out of this show are the opening title sequence, which freaked me out as a kid, that one Halloween special that was way more scary than most other Halloween specials on the channel, and then Shia LaBeouf. Like I said, the characters could be pretty out there, and the plots could be a bit zany at times, but nothing too weird was really happening outside of that. It's mostly just a normal show following the lives of an unnormal family. So I think this one's going on D tier. Lizzie McGuire. For the most part, this one's pretty much in the same boat as Even Stevens, just a show following the everyday life of a teenage girl and her friends and family. Honestly, the only weird thing going on in this show was when we'd get the little animated Lizzie going on, but even then, that was just a way to show the audience what is going on in her head. It's not like an actual animated character in this live-action world that other people or even Lizzie could see. It was a way to like sort of break the mold and make this one stand out from other shows, but it wasn't anything too weird to really detract from how grounded this show is. So I think this one's probably going on D tier as well. Phil of the Future. Alright, now things are starting to ramp up a bit. You all know the story. A boy named Phil and his family were on vacation from the 22nd century. Something in the time machine had blown and they ended up right here in our time zone. Basically pulling like a Back to the Future sort of story here with a kid and his family getting stuck in the past. Plenty of shenanigans ensue from their many gadgets and gizmos from the future, and there's plenty of like fish out of water scenarios with them trying to blend in. And then, of course, there's their pet caveman. Now, granted, all of that is very weird, but at the same time, same with like American Dragon, it felt like they blended this pretty well with a normal, grounded sitcom. I remember watching entire episodes where it would be so focused on their everyday lives that I would forget that they were from the future, until eventually the caveman popped out or they used one of their many gadgets. Don't get me wrong, it's a pretty weird show, but I don't think this makes its way to the top of the list. So I'd say a solid A tier. That's So Raven. Sort of in the same boat, but this time instead of being from the future, the main character can see the future. Or, well, bits and pieces of it. Every episode would sort of follow the same general outline. Raven and her surrounding characters are going about their lives. Raven stares off into the distance and gets like a 5 to 10 second clip of something happening later in the episode, and then spends the rest of the episode trying to avoid it. Decently weird setup for a show, but it's not like she's in like a coven of sightseeing witches or something. She's just a normal kid who happens to get little glimpses into the future. There's no other mystical or powered characters, no big bad she has to defeat or anything. It's basically just the normal world outside of her visions. So I think this one's gonna go on B tier. Wizards of Waverly Place. Speaking of mystical and powered characters, this one goes all in on that. This feels like sort of the live-action equivalent to Jake Long, where not only do the main characters have powers, this time being the Russo siblings who are all learning how to control their magical abilities, but at the same time there's a whole mystical, magical world going on unseen to everybody else. If it had just been a show where some kids learned they were magic and used it to get into shenanigans, it would probably hover around Raven for me. But they just went much bigger with the magic here, making an entire magical community with not just other witches and wizards, but other magical beings too that they had to deal with, all while trying to keep their magic shenanigans a secret. And then you get the whole ordeal where only one member of the family can keep their powers at the end. So the series ends with this huge magical competition to decide who gets the powers, which honestly, thinking about it, I feel like it would just tear families apart. Like, if I grew up learning magic with my siblings and one of them got to keep the powers and I lost them, you'd better believe every holiday is going to be awkward as hell. I'll make sure of it. It does have a decent amount of non-weird storylines and situations, but at the same time, there's so much strange world building and scenarios happening every episode that it never lets you forget that these are magical characters. I think this was one of the biggest swings for Disney, and it was a very weird show from top to bottom. I think we've got our first S tier. The Proud Family. Probably the most normal out of Disney's animated shows. Most of the time, this one is just like your average everyday sitcom revolving around the lives of, you guessed it, the Proud Family. Sure, there were some weirder characters like Sugar Mama, Uncle Bobby, and the Gross Sisters, but they were never treated as strange or anything, just a little bit more out there than the others. But nothing too wacky or insane going on here, unless you count the TV movie with the weird little peanut guys. That was really weird. We're going to ignore that for now. You take that out of the equation, this is a pretty average show in terms of strangeness. So I'm going to put this one on D tier. Good Luck Charlie. A lot of the Disney Channel shows at this time had some sort of like hook to them. Like, oh, they're magic. Oh, they're from the future. Oh, it's Shia LaBeouf. But this one was just like, this girl's making a video diary for her new baby sister. Sure, there's plenty of shenanigans afoot, but nothing too crazy or wacky. Just sort of your average sitcom wackiness. None of the characters had any like extremely weird quirks or anything. They were just pretty like played up character tropes. Even the whole premise of the older sister making a video diary for her younger sister isn't weird or anything. That's just nice. Nothing out of the ordinary with this one. It's going on D tier. Hannah Montana. At first, this one doesn't seem super weird. A teenager with a secret alter ego that happens to be a huge pop star. Sure, whatever. But the more I think about it, the more that this strikes me as weird just due to the fact that I don't think it would work. Yeah, there's anonymous musicians out there, but it's usually people wearing masks, you know, like Sleep Token or stuff like that. But even then, they get found out eventually. I don't think throwing on a wig is going to help out much when you have the exact same face. For context, I was at a music festival once and I had a group of girls come up to me and ask if I was Tades from the band Hot Mulligan. And I don't even look like that guy that much. I just happen to have a beard. Side note, I was wearing a Hot Mulligan shirt at the time, so not only did they think I was somebody that I wasn't, but they also must have assumed he was a douchebag who would wear his own merch. I would never. I would have loved if, like, in the final episode, she came out and was like, I'm Hannah Montana. And everyone was just like, yeah, we can see your face. We know. This one's not that weird. It just doesn't make a lot of sense when you really start to think about it. I'd say C tier. Fish hooks. For the most part, this is just a show about a group of friends going through high school. Only the catch is they're fish in a pet store. And you might be thinking, yeah, that sounds a bit zany, but not that weird. Which makes me think, you haven't watched Fish Hooks. This could have been like a pretty normal show with just some like wacky fish hijinks going on. But no, this seemed like Disney's attempt to make their own version of a Cartoon Network show. And honestly, it might have felt more at home there with how crazy this one gets. The characters, the animation, hell, even the voice acting are so out there and weird that I tend to forget it was a Disney Channel show altogether. There's not many other shows on this channel that come close to how actually insane and absurd this one is. I think this is going on S tier. Sunny with a Chance. This one wasn't that weird. I mean, the premise is this girl gets discovered online and gets the chance to join a sketch show for kids. Pretty much living out her dream of being on a fake version of all that. Some of the characters are a bit out there, but nothing like too extreme. And most of the weirdness here came from the in-universe show that they were starring in, So Random, which was basically like a watered-down version of its real-life counterpart, but never came close to the actual weirdness that was All That. It is a bit more out there than something like your Lizzie McGuire's, but never felt too weird where it couldn't just be our world that this is taking place in. So I think I'm going to put it on C tier. Jessie. Another pretty standard sitcom, this time following a girl who becomes a nanny to a wealthy family's kids. First of all, put some respect on Fran Drescher's name. We all know what you're doing, Disney. Secondly, for having such a grounded premise, they did a decent job of upping the weirdness here compared to some of their other shows. All of the kids that she's watching have their own weird quirks and qualities to them. And then you've got the butler Bertram, who's basically a sasshole and odd in his own right. And then, of course, the fact that the family pet is a giant lizard. Outside of those, though, and the Spider-Man crossover, this one never got like too out there and weird. So I think this is going on C tier too. Phineas and Ferb. Honestly, a solidly weird show. The whole setup is basically two brothers who try to make their summer vacation the best ever by creating and doing increasingly weird shit. All the while, their older sister spends every day trying to get them in trouble for it. And I mean, hey, if the whole show is just them building a bunch of crazy stuff, it would probably still rank pretty high. But then you take into account the Perry of it all. Let's take this one step by step real quick. The family has a pet platypus. Okay, pretty weird. I mean, we just had a giant lizard as a pet. Platypus is somewhat out there. Then we find that the platypus has a secret double life as a spy for an organization with spy animals, and then spends every day foiling the schemes of a mad scientist trying to take over the tri-state area. Yeah, there we go. Honestly, that's just the start of it, man. You get further into Doofenshmirtz's backstories, and then all the extremely weird side characters, and everyone just being cool with all of this weird shit going on. And it's like the creators opened up a Pandora's box of weirdness. And then you get even further into like the feature-length movies and the specials, and now you've got time travel, interdimensional portals, superheroes, Santa and his elves, and it just doesn't stop. You add all of this together and you've got one of the weirdest shows to ever come out of Disney. But the weirdest thing of all is how perfectly it all works together. Like, it never feels too strange, but you take a step back and this is some of the weirdest shit to ever make it to air. This show deserves a spot at the top. Going on S tier. The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. This whole series pretty much revolves around twin brothers living in a hotel. Not too bad here. Like, yeah, it's a bit of a strange concept, but nothing too crazy. They're constantly getting into shenanigans and running amok, but really it's the surrounding characters that bring out the weirdness here. Most of them are decently normal outside of some sitcom tropes. I'd say this one sits around the same level of weirdness as something like Jessie, in that it's decently normal outside of a few concepts and characters. So we're going on C tier. The Sweet Life on Deck. Now, with the sequel series, the weirdness is bumped up just a bit, mostly due to the fact that the whole thing takes place on a cruise ship. Now, what's so weird about that? I don't know about you, but I've never heard of a floating school before, unless we're counting Sky High. Shout out Sky High. I understand that the cruise is by the same hotel company, but I just can't wrap my head around the fact that the whole series is basically a school on a boat, at the same time just being like a normal cruise ship that people are going on cruises on. And then there's just this boarding school part of it. It's basically the same show as The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Why is it on a boat? That's going to bump this one up a little bit for me, so we're going on B tier. Pair of Kings. The whole premise here is basically two brothers finding out that they're actually royalty and being sent off to a tropical island to rule it, which definitely raises quite a few questions here. Mainly why an entire nation is willing to hand control over to two kids whose only real qualification is sharing the right DNA. Then you throw in the island monsters, ancient traditions, bizarre customs, and then just constant life-threatening situations. And that all balls up into one of the weirdest live-action shows Disney's produced. And then things only get weirder when Mitchell Musso decided to leave and they were just like, fine, here's another long-lost brother to fill out the cast. I'd probably put this on A tier. Gravity Falls. Is it cheating to put Gravity Falls on this list? The whole concept of the show is just kids finding weirder and weirder things going on in this town. As badly as I don't want to put this on one of the top spots, since it sort of feels like a cop-out, with all the insane characters and plots going on throughout the show, it just wouldn't feel right not to. This is like putting Michael Jordan on a basketball player tier list, or me on a handsome YouTuber tier list. You already know what's gonna happen. This show could basically be retitled to Weird Shit Happens. It's going on S tier, no other options. And last up, Dog with a Blog. I think this show might have actually killed my Disney Channel watching career. It was right at the tail end. And when I caught this one, it was kind of just like, okay, I'm done. Signing off, good for me. I guess having a family that has a talking dog isn't like the craziest concept for a show, but why go through the trouble of introducing the framework of this dog having a blog? Is it just for the name? I feel like it's just for the name. Somebody realized that the words dog and blog rhymed, and we're like, there we go, we got it. No hate, since I've seen maybe like 2 episodes, but the weirdest thing to me is how this lasted for 3 seasons on that premise. I don't think this one's strange enough to make it to the top of the list, but it's a solid A tier for me. And there you have it, my rankings of the weirdest Disney Channel shows. Do you agree? Are there any that I should have added to the list? Let me know. Butting in real quick while I'm editing the video, there's a few shows that probably could have made the list, like The Buzz on Maggie, Dave the Barbarian, The Replacements. I have a lot of these on another list that I'm currently making, and I didn't really want to like double dip. So if you think those shows were weird enough to make this list, which they probably are, let me know where you would have ranked them. And hey, you know what's not weird? Liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.